Now then, hello to Ezraim. You might be in confusion as of right now, not seeing what was in your expectation in accordance to the thumbnail and title. All I need of you right now is distinct amount of time. So, let's go on a walk right now. I have a question to ask you first. What is language? For something we use so readily, does it seem to be quite the ambiguous thing what it actually is? For example, does this guy over here use language? And if he doesn't, there seems to be an awful lot of disharmony with the neighbor ones over for them to not use any language. But those are just sounds we give meaning to, right? And we is of course in this case all-inclusive, as even animals put meaning into these sounds, even if they don't understand the word sit, as in the word sit itself, do they still put meaning into the distinct sounds they hear. So, if we just call anything language, would a car still be language for the exclusive of only word, there's a car here? One word so specific we don't even have a singular word for it. And why would we, if an entire sentence suffices as well to express the same idea as that singular word? And that's really it, isn't it? Sentences. A dog can make sounds and understand the meaning behind them, but he doesn't formulate sentences out of those sounds. But I would beg to differ, that even with a singular sound, with a singular word, you could make an entire sentence out of that. And where's the difference then? Careful! Phew, that one was close. I almost died there. But what was that? What did I say? Was it a word? I mean, compared to the dog just barking at you, was it not all that different now, was it? One word, one noise, and conveys the meaning behind it. How about we go one step back for now, and ask about this one? Language is more than just sounds. You can also write it down. This one, you can understand the meaning behind it, even if I don't explain it. But then at what point does it lose meaning? Where's the border of something being considered a word, when something you can clearly understand the meaning behind is not? You could say it wasn't written in a writing system, but what does that even mean? If you can write it and others understand what it means. Now, compared to something you cannot understand, far more complex in nature, is considered a word. It's almost as if there is an arbitrary border we pretend has value. But so what of it? You can understand it, even if we are not calling it a word. Does it still function like one? But what then now about this dog? He is to the spoken language what the symbol is to the written. And yet, is he still communicating, no matter what we decide to call it? However, what is there as a way to communicate that no one would call language under any definition? More importantly, do we still use words of language to describe it? When speaking about it, the thing all of this is based around, the one question I asked myself. Can you make language out of music? Not just rhetorically, by expressing your emotions, but literally, by the note, by the letter. And what if I told you? You already know this language. The first and easy step would be to just map letters to keys. This is a dumb choice I will be humoring for a bit. Instead of simply laying out the alphabet, can we be a bit more creative, however? The order of the alphabet is mostly made up by the Greeks and Romans, while the piano is ordered strictly by how things sound, so we should order letters by sounds. We have 5 octaves in the last C. That's 61 keys on our 26 letters. So, written can, written with a K. We cut out a lot of sharp, very, written with a W, much away. These 21 letters are distinct enough, and this is ignoring that the alphabet to begin with is unfit for the English language. You think there are 5 vowels? Try 20. Only through indoctrination of the alphabet do we assume that there are only 5 vowels and sounds we can make out of combinations of vowels, or just accept as one of the 4 ways you can pronounce a vowel. Only through English as world language do we not think much about that this Germanic trait is something uncommonly happening. I have to stop somewhere. If you want variation, there's a lot of on a piano. In fact, is 21 letters perfect to space them out in a repeating pattern of C, D sharp, F sharp, A. This way are all somewhat equally spaced out from another, and the entire reason why I don't just use 21 keys next to another. Was it an E or the higher pitched F? The joke is on me, if you don't have perfect pitch, as it was a G. There are similar letters, but we have the real estate, so we use it. I could put in a bit more effort, but due to soon relevant reasons, that's not needed. What you have to accept is, for one, that I place R as a vowel. It is a symbol that represents just way too differing ideas to pin down what it actually is, even in English where it is mostly on the consonant side. I'll spare you the details. With 6 vowels can be perfectly spread them out to always be on the C. Now cue the speaking. And by sleep to say we end. Despite doing the most bare-bones strategy, have I already done some tricky tomfoolery. Languages don't just say words letter after L-E-T-T-E-R. We fuse consonants to the vowels, so instead of 6, or let's say 5 inputs for letter, the second T being no more than a speaking aid, would it be le-ter, just 2. Also good that we didn't put letters next to another, as the simple tool I'm using cannot have me play sharps and non-sharps simultaneously, but that is more of a me issue. Still, despite my tragedy, are there many heard issues, so I hope. I guess it doesn't sound horribly entirely, just as harmonious I guess. Disclaimer insert that I'm not a music person, those who are will be far better at the practical job of what comes next. Otherwise, are you already here, so you probably will stay anyways, as you are interested in the theory. Theory like one important thing, I mentioned it already, still do we need to rehearse before continuing. The big thing where language is that and music is this, lies in distinction. I did my best by spacing out letters. Honestly, I would like to cut out the top octaves, as they are far too dominant in sound, just that it removes even more uniqueness. While in theory, these 2 notes are different, and depending on how you tune the piano, can do a lot of different sounds. Those are only technically different. We do not see those as speaking. I now want to start from the other direction. Why does this sound like language? Mit dem rangskarhuk fischna guhumle hukna, jurem ni kadehud, yuko. That did sound like language, just that it is made up by me. Don't get me wrong, these are not random letters. It has grammar, it has words, it has sentence structure. Just that by definition, all these traits are also included in piano keys as well. Only how the sound sounds is different, and that is enough for our brain as it is primed on a distinction between very specific sound types. Then again, don't all foreign languages sound like gibberish? If you don't like my own example, maybe I just give you something else. For now, I try to make music a language, but what if we make language music, aka songs? They are basically the equivalent of asking, can you music out of voice? It is called a cappella. One of my favorite bands is a cappella, so I can tell you it is indeed music. But let's listen to a bit more traditional music instead. The magic of music is that not all are created equally, but it does reveal a new thing about our brain. As you probably don't struggle to understand me, even when in the back lyrics are sung, just due to you not knowing that language, so it is sounding like gibberish. And that's pretty much all language you don't know. Learning my fourth language now by myself, can I tell you how much it affects your brain once you know at least some things and point at it going, ooh, I know that one. Fun fact here is that no cosaretta basho shako is not made up of a real language. It is a predictive language how human language will evolve in the future, yet it sounds real. Yet does it feel like it mixed in as well with the instruments. It by no means is drowned by the music. You simply cannot make out the words, as you could not possibly know what they are, so all you hear is a string of noises that resemble its language, how you know it, even when all it could be is someone doing humming, and you would never be the wiser. What you instead now hear is Lament in Hell We Live, a song that mostly is similar in how the music and voice mixes, just that it is in English. I do hope to assume that you notice the difference on how much more audible the spoken is, though on an objective standpoint, is there not a large gap in audio mixing. In fact, both have the voice fill in intentional gaps in the instruments, as the voice is the instrument for that part. Still, not a music guy by the way. I do this through careful observation and put it into words. My point is that no matter, the other side of the wall being exactly this. Even when there is no voice, does some music feel more dominant. Rhythm games do that especially, as for them, if not some idle nonsense, they get music custom made for this genre of having the music be the most forefront thing you're supposed to notice, unlike typical game music being specifically crafted to do the opposite. If that was a bit hard to understand, that was through no human words rambling in between my words. It was instruments mixing with my voice. Nothing half, nothing full. So where exactly was now the difference between instruments and voice? Voice can be used like an instrument, not only making sounds like an instrument, but the speaking part itself is what the instrument is. If you can use speaking as if it is an instrument, why couldn't you play an instrument as speaking? That was exactly the issue with this before. I just blatantly applied speaking rules to an instrument and pretended that would sound good. Just like with singing, do we need to play an instrument normally, but that somehow has to be turned into speak. For one, let's throw away the lead idea. Consonants are by design impossible, as they are when you specifically use something beside your vocal cords, which are the only things existing for a piano or any standard instrument for that matter. Maybe we should start by designing a completely new alphabet that you can easily read out and play the words written without having to wrap your head around what note was what letter. We perhaps start by what we wrote on. So I thought about having lines of differing height, as in the ends of notes are clearly separated in tone. This is one big difference between voice and instrument. Just look at Chinese, where ma is horse, but ma is mama. If not for me having butchered that pronunciation totally, most likely. You probably even struggle to hear the difference, just like me, when you don't specifically know that language. And write that down. We'll be getting back to it soon. In both cases it's the letter A, but the way you pronounce it is different. A piano cannot just have a sound be differently be pronounced. If you press a key, every time without a fail will it always be the same note. That means we should have our writing system just reflect that, to simplify. So yes, long way short have I simply reinvented the note sheet. If you say A and O, nothing tells you how to say them, so you would need to have some convention how to play it, but a note sheet is relational. These letters show how they are played in relation to all others of the text. Even if you think this is a B instead of a D, will it still overall work? Naturally, in reality, should you only shift by octaves, and for our sakes, as beings not evolved to understand sound like this, should it be fixed? In reality, would some weird species that has vocal cords like a piano evolve to understand tones in relationship to another, most likely? That is just what Chinese is after all. You don't make a difference between ma and ma, only due to not ever having been trained to see the difference in these sounds. If you got used to speaking piano, you should be able to really hear a difference between notes, even if it sounds impossible right now for people without the lucky perfect pitch. It's all just down to what the brain has the need to make a distinction of. We can and will start off music related. In music there are octaves. Honestly, no idea what the scientific definition is of one, just that it wouldn't be a random number like 8 if that hadn't any specific value. In other words, should a music language treat octaves all in some identical sense? If it is now C, or this C, is it in the end C? That limits us down to these 7 letters that I will just take away from music. We want to write things out on the note sheet, just that makes things faster. Can I for now use the letters? As I am also using an online tool mapping keyboard to keyboard, so I'm writing things down with what is in here, to have an easy unique way of expressing the 3 different octaves. I know that this is big C and this is small c, but then what is this going to be? Extra large C? And link for this free online piano in the description, by the way. If we now simply create the words as we are used to, is that no different compared to simply mapping pre-existing words with extra steps? I may be able to transcribe them into the alphabet in a meaningful way due to the tool I'm using, so we could actually say the word also in alphabet instead of just piano. Still not the point. Tricky Tony is back, with more than just combining vowels and consonants. I should mention, these sharps sure could be useful for something like grammar or who knows what. The first thing to start off with in the beginning, as that is the meaning of first as something that is at the start of something. Have I some rules to be gotten? I use the 3 octaves like guidelines for words. I could use all keys for every word, just that I lack the skills of making words recognizable that way. Words should be of similar idea, so that you hear something and can make out what it is. English is a strange baseline, due to many weird factors it has going for it. Instead, my example from Japanese, where without exception all words end in U, and if it isn't a verb can you simply add suru to make it one. Even without the rest of the sentence can you easily figure out that uta is song, but utao is to sing. Especially for forming language out of music, should it have this consistency as, after all, is music not just random combinations. I use mostly the middle of random things, the lower for nouns and the higher for verbs. Do not ask me why. I simply think that this is Boba and this is Kiki. That is another thing, should be done in optimal case for who is the stronger person than me. I can only attempt to make them sound like the words. Language is not arbitrary. We have some intrinsic idea of what means what. May in the end just be thousands of years we align the collective sounds humans use towards one thing. Still is it true that Kiki is sounding just more round than Booba, which is why all the boobas everyone is wishing to see are these. I'll also skip all grammar for now. It would work in a way incomprehensible to me. I can describe it, not make it. Grammar in this language does some music mumbo jumbo to transform sounds consistently that can blankly be applied to all. It couldn't be me simply shifting things in octave, as that gets us out of bounds for anything that isn't in the middle octave, depending on shift direction. I keep words additionally short. To begin with, is it the case that we don't really say the word by letter? It is weird how a word in this language can look really long, as we could have 100 notes that are all supposed to be played at the same time, still taking up as much time as just playing one note. We also miss a lot of context. I have weird words like hue to translate. That would be related to color and would reflect that in how it sounds. I have to only make 150 words, sometimes only the negative of some words. You would assume that something simply sounds like color, whatever that means. I can no do that. Finally, would jingles also be nice? Another thing that makes sense only in music. It is something that in fact would be perfect for recognition of words. For that one, wanted to shift the discussion to later, as it is a bit more complex. With all the rules set, here are my 101 thoughts I got while making these 150 words I will need. This is more going to be the point where I tell you what I would want to have, if I could do so. All I got is basic theory, that you can use the power of imagination to figure out what it should be. We had Tricky Tony with saying multiple letters at once. Well, more precisely, can you hold the vowel while saying consonants? A music that is more extreme. You can just hold one key and play others as well. If I turn off sustained notes, do you have this and this? Honestly, I have no idea what is better, so I just keep sustain on and don't bother with holding notes. This is especially relevant for what I start with. The equivalent of vowels in this are the 7 letters, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. They are the building blocks and most basic idea what you can play. So are they some form of baseline. I use them for simple concepts including A, the word undefined article. I have probably somewhere the list I made of all the words. It is ordered by some things that belong together, like all forms of article like thingies, including the, but also that and this. One of the fun features of a language is that you don't read most of what's before you, or listen to most of it, a feature you never even think about. Just take one of those speed reading tests. Even the average reading speed is so fast, ask yourself, are you really reading the entire word? That is the funny thing your brain does when you ever misread something and years after someone asks you what the fuck you just said. But there never was a chance of you being able to read it correctly, as your brain makes it whatever you think it is, to a point where there's not enough doubt for you to carefully read it again and realize you are wrong. This concept is captured by jingles in music, however can you also apply it to the base sounds. I use the sound of C for exactly articles. How far this should go is a question. I skip over grammar for simplicity. What still belongs in this talk is plural. I have done it through simply shifting up an octave. Does that make sense? Maybe, or not. You are lucky that you just skipped to the end in this. It took far too long to figure out all the things without basic knowledge on my hand. I told you that nouns are lowercase octaves and verbs higher case octaves. Adjectives are more than just in the middle. They are the introduction to a word. This is indeed a concept existing in music as intros, but also should there be the outro. When having done only simple adjectives did I simply repeat it after the word, but that is insane bloat and not really how outros work. Most of them are short to round off the song. It should simply sum up what it was when they get complex. How much? Depends on how you want to make words. And as I make them simple, will it only be one sound. They do have a bass sound, where the noun would be in case that you have to say them solo. The example is outrageous. These are the notes. As hue is. Would it play out as outrageous hue? Going over the verbs is to say how basic my approach is going to be. Letters are like notes in a word that flow together so that you can exude information none of them had on their own. If we go too hard on the music side, will the issue appear not being able to see the start and end of a word? While yes, it is based on what you're used to, what you can hear. That point I made before. Will there be natural limits? At some point is it too fluent? That is an issue with how all key inputs hum. Even words that end in the vowel. The sound we make that are most similar to piano. We can say to be not only, with to be existing as well. Hold me here on disbelief as I try to make an example, saying on a B is fluent to a point where non-native speakers most likely stand no chance to make out how many words I just said. Is honor a word? Or maybe a B? For those screaming, naturally is a B 2 words, you can clearly hear that. Abortion is a word, and it is not abortion. It's abortion. Functionally identical to a B, when you don't know words. And what if I just spoke weirdly and actually said a portion? Outside of context, can you not say no matter? And non-native speakers never have context by definition. This hurdle strangles you all the time making words. At what point would even native speakers struggle to make the distinction? Now to verbs, was this the issue? At first did I make everything just use the middle octave, but I ran out of unique combinations, so I had to shift the rest of the verbs and all nouns away from it. Before did I use the other octaves for other gimmicks, like negatives getting a prefix played, like all prefixes in the lowercase octave so that you can make out it is a word with a prefix. I just couldn't come up with more combinations to make, so I had to rethink how to do this halfway through. I guess that would be part of a language as well, where some weird quirks exist as language never gets created from the ground up, even con languages. It's as it is for now. It took too long already. I started as well off with far more basic ideas, having one key input be one word. This I knew is unsustainable, just that now it may even be wrong altogether. Exemptions made in some words where it would still make sense anyways. I am just hearing the beeps and boops until they sound well. Tritones, I think that is what they are called. I figured out myself through them just sounding good together. This would need years of music study to be done correctly. And you got me instead. What are these symbols? I think I saw that one once, but the other never in my life. Nouns is where I got more complex on need more than want. This idea of a centering sound is what I follow, like using C as a sound to build around the word. Even concepts suffice, like moving across the piano in a specific pattern. If you know music, will this hopefully make sense and idea. What I try to do more on nouns as they came later is to have things sound as what they are. That one is kiki, for some instinct embedded shared amongst humans. So should a piano word feel as what it is. So does this sound as if it is crystalline, even though there never was a crystal who made the sound in his life. To begin with, is this how we make music in extreme? When they have to be literal words and not just concepts. An artist like Ferriquitus is the best example there, where she has weird sounding music because it breaks what we think of as normal. We could take a lesson from Chinese here. They have similar sounds for something. So, is this a symbol and sound for air? Kong. But the real word for air is Tian Kong. They know how messy it gets when you just have one sound for a word, preferring far more complex words over to prevent ambiguity. Doesn't apply when I am making 150 words. In reality, would a music language work this way? You have something that sounds crystalline, but the word for crystal would probably be stone plus that sound, while that sound plus blue may instead be lapis lazuli or sapphire. That would be the entire thing with making words here now, wouldn't it be the case? What sound sounds like the concept of existential dread, as these things ironically may even be easier to music out compared to dog, where you already know what a dog sounds as an impossible to replicate sound by a piano. This is how we come to nouns being far more jingle-like, where most other words are simply one or two sounds instead. Before we play all this out, have I to make a last announcement. All what I create is outside of the context I am using it in, not as if I even could make it work anyways. That is in itself how real language works. Words are not created to fill your needs of translation, they just happen. It is a big challenge with translation of anything non-sterile, which is all consumption media. You can translate it correctly, including phrases, formality or what only exists in one language. But real meaning includes a sound order of words, choices of synonyms and more. Piano as language would mean you would translate with words that make a good rhythm compared to how it sounds to be said. Even in the optimal world where it is the best piano words to ever be heard, would it suck on that bias alone. It only will sound better as it does right now. And what is the question here? Would it sound good if you were to make better words? As it is funny with the tool allowing it to me, can I give you quickly how it sounds instead when I just type out as normally and have the order of the keyboard dictate what tone has every letter? I didn't even do tact for this one. What is a 3/4 and how does it taste? I have another idea how it could sound in general better. If you use all your music skills, could you have words influence another? I did say, if things are too flowy, that's bad for understanding. But maybe there are tricks to still have things get close and sound without sounding belonging. Prefixes as a negative could be an underlying tone instead of a prefix. The idea of prefix stems from us being incapable of making two independent sounds at the same time. In music, a prefix, or also what I did with adjectives, could be elegantly solved through multi-streaming words. On one side is a word, the other is added bonus that alters it. This is a praxis on the basis of saying anti-hello, or whatever you want to interpret this into. Grammar I just didn't even do at all, or sharp notes. Unlike prefixes should grammar not be handled the same way as it transforms the base itself. Not running is still running in base, but ran is another beast. Ran cannot be something you do, as all it is a descriptor of an action, and will run is a prediction. Music heads figure that one out for me, will ya? Now was this ultimately a success? Probably not. It is something that definitely could work. It's the tragedy of having ideas of a topic you have no expertise in. You can still think about it with some serious deep thought, yet lack the ability to pull through. Einstein said. Or maybe not. Think like a child instead of work like a child. The best person to ask a question is always the guy out of the loop, as he isn't tainted by the preconceived notions. Even if 99% of his questions are trivial to answer for the expert, will be that 1% where the expert realizes he can't answer, agreeing or denying. As experts never think from that angle about the subject and miss out on fundamentals, having thought to be taught what is fundamental. I did tell you you know this language, and that is factually true. Jingle he, jingle ho, jingle tra-la-la-la-lo. The power of jingles is that you get the idea no matter how precise they are, if the general structure stays the same, identical in fact to how you can read this nonsense, as it is mostly resembling the word it is. We are not trained to think like that, but let me give it a try in something you can make out most likely. What does this mean? If you said bad Christmas or similar, that worked without any prior communication on what words are what. In principle, could you right now relate our ability to understand music to reading emojis? They have a meaning, just what exactly it is up in the air. That though is mostly due to not being used like language. If the smiley face emoji is always used and exactly only for the purpose of replacing the word to smile, would it become no different from these guys? To end it off, will I say, man, does my brain hurt when making this. Like the part where I have to type out the notes on the piano. You see how I laid it out, just that I cannot read the screen and type. I can type decently fast, just not in these speed typing tests, as I need to switch between reading and typing. It's also not as if I could remember these nonsense words when something I couldn't even pronounce is under them. That on top of me using a keyboard, so I have to do some abstruse hand gestures to hit all the notes at once. This really took so much brain power out of me to do despite only taking half an hour. It took longer to stitch it all together, with how I had to mostly play one word at a time when I can't read and type at once. On top of me needing to figure out what in the world hand positions I need to make, especially for jingles, we had to remember multiple things at once and play them fast. Hopes and gloom, my guys, that is how I put this together to sound as if I've played out at once. I will say that I had to type out 80I so often that I started to hear the word 2 in it. Meaning, to some degree, did this already work in creating a real language. As in, you can understand what is said despite seemingly not being possible to us. Then do I want to highlight things like especially this part. That sounds to me actually just good, and it had nothing to do with purposely creating a jingle or something. This happened due to the notes that represent the different words forming a mnemonic jingle. You could most likely make it sound better, but the idea behind it is solid. That is exactly what this language is for. Instead of creating something, you write something and let fate decide how it sounds. I also think that the to be or not to be sounds really good, as to be is the same, so you get that go up, go down, repeat, but now you suddenly do something else. I had not the brain power to figure out word spacing in this, so it really sounds more that the or not belongs to the first to be. But perhaps that is how it should be, and adjectives or whatnot should come after a word on a piano language. There were also insane coincidence for me only making 150 words. I just had the Excel list tell me if I do a repeat, so I had no idea that I made the word for sleep and death almost identical. That is, on a poetic level, really cool. You must here and now talk about eternal sleep instead of dying. Oh, and I totally forgot about this guy, as that was the premise on the thumbnail. He says, of course, it's after all just random keys being accidentally pressed. That's really it now. Go home, or click on something else. I have planned other things like this, just that for now I did mostly gameplay here.